Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining me again this morning on Next on the Tee. I'm your host, Chris Mascaro, and today I have the honor and the privilege of talking with a PGA Tour legend, a guy who should be in the PGA Hall of Fame, two-time major champion and perhaps the greatest putter of all time, Mr. Dave Stockton. Mr. Stockton is going to join me in just a moment, but before we get started, I want to kick off the show like we do every single week here by saluting the brave men and women serving in our military. We thank you for all the things that you do, your daily sacrifices to keep the rest of us safe. We also want to thank those of you who serve or have served in every branch of the military and public service. We truly appreciate what you do to preserve our freedoms and our liberties. It's through your strength and efforts that our way of life is even possible. Our sincere thanks as well to Sean Cruz and all the folks at the Armed Forces Radio Network. It's an honor and a privilege for us to be a part of your network. You can find our show by going to armedforcesradionetwork.org. We also want to thank everyone listening in on iHeartRadio, as well as great radio sites across the internet like Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iTunes, Player.fm, and Blog Talk Radio as well. I also want to give a special shout-out to our good friends, Mike Kovacs, Ben Kerr, Mark Medeski, and the rest of the great staff over at lastwordonsports.com. Check them out online and on Twitter. Their site is fantastic, contains great content across every sport. Their staff of writers are wonderful. You're going to love going to their site every single day for your sports news. If you haven't been there yet, check it out and then bookmark it. Again, lastwordonsports.com. Plus, if someone's dragging you to the mall or to the grocery store, or you're just simply tired of the same old on your commute, download the Player.fm or Stitcher app for your smartphone and take us with you everywhere you go. Let us give you something fun to focus on while you're out and about. Our show is brought to you by the great folks over at Kyvan Foods. Former Bengals and Falcons tight end Reggie Kelly has created a wonderful array of products. His salsas, sauces, and spices, they're all natural, and they're going to liven up every meal or recipe that you have. So wow your friends at your next home party, upcoming holiday party, or your next tailgate party by adding Kyvan products to everything you're going to put on your menu. Check them out online at Kyvan82.com. That's Kyvan, K-Y-V-A-N, the number 82.com. All right, now joining me on the Kyvan Foods guest line is Mr. Dave Stockton. Let me remind you about what should be a Hall of Fame career. He's from San Bernardino, California. He attended the University of Southern California and earned his bachelor's degree in general management. In 1964, he won the Pac-10 men's golf individual title and was an All-American. Later that year, he turned pro. His first PGA Tour victory came in 1967 at the Colonial National Invitational. All in all, he won 25 times on tour, 11 on the PGA Tour, including the 1970 and 1976 PGA Championships, and 14 more wins on the Champions Tour, including 3 majors, the 1992 and 1994 Senior Players Championship and the 1996 U.S. Senior Open. He teamed with his son, Dave Stockton Jr., to win the Champions Challenge in 2000 and in 2008. He played on 2 victorious Ryder Cup teams in 1971 and 1977 and captained the victorious 1991 team. Mr. Stockton is widely known also as a putting genius. His book, Unconscious Putting, has gotten a 4.5-star rating on Amazon.com and is a must-read for every golfer, so be sure to pick it up for the golfer in your life this Christmas. I am both honored and thrilled to have him next on the tee with me this morning. Good morning, Mr. Stockton. Thank you for being here.
Good morning, Chris. Good to be with you.
So I know you're out hunting this morning with your grandson. How's it going so far? How you doing?
Well, the ducks and geese are winning. The hunters nothing, and the geese and ducks are flying around. It's typical California. It's probably going to be 85 here today, and it's not that we haven't had the weather. We had one storm up north that pushed a few birds down, but so far it's just enjoying the great outdoors at the moment.
Well, at least you got good weather for it. I hope you start winning, and I appreciate you taking some time away from it to join me.
No problem.
Let's start at the beginning. I read you actually started. You were a heck of an athlete. You played baseball, basketball, golf growing up, but a unfortunate surfing accident took you out of the other 2 sports. Was golf your first love, or had that not happened, might we know you now as either a great L.A. Dodger or perhaps a great member of the L.A. Lakers?
Neither of those, but I did like baseball and basketball a whole lot more than golf. My dad was a professional. I lived on a golf course, but in the 50s, golf was almost a sissy sport. And so basically what I would, until I hurt my back when I was 15, and at that point in time, I was no threat to be. I was better at baseball than I was basketball, but was never going to go into that direction. But I started working on my game because I had to, because I had the only way I was going to be able to afford a scholarship to university. And it worked out well. I mean, here I am. I just turned 73 last week, and can still play if I want to. In fact, I'll play with my son Ronnie and the father's son in December. So it's a great sport, and you meet a lot of interesting and really neat people.
Yeah, no doubt. I also read, you mentioned your father, Gail, who was an individual conference champion at USC himself, once conducted an exhibition with Walter Hagen. Do you mind sharing that story?
Yeah, I mean, it was in 37, 4 years before I was born, but my dad was a really good player. There just wasn't any tour in the 30s, and he was the pro, and he figured out it didn't take but about a year and a half to realize the days he wanted to play golf were Wednesdays, Saturdays, and Sundays, and as a pro, those are the days he had to work. So he went into the sporting goods business, which was great for me. By the time I grew up, all I knew my dad was owning a sporting goods store, which gave me carte blanche to do any other sports. But my dad could flat play. I mean, I won the club championship once at home, and he won it 9 times. And I shot 164 there. He shot 463. So it was just his time when he was born in the, and then when he played in the 20s and 30s, there was just no tour to go on. So he was my only teacher. I mean, basically he taught me how to putt and chip and all the rest of the stuff when I was young. When I was 6 or 7, since it was only 2 doors down from our house, I'd go down, I'd challenge. If I saw somebody on the green, I'd go challenge them. And it's kind of interesting to look back on the fact that, that's 60-some-odd years ago, and basically I've never had to change anything in my putting stroke. I mean, golf has evolved so much now with the way they can teach you, with the TrackMan and all the other stuff you can study and you learn all these different things. But when it gets to putting, that's a whole different matter. And I think that's one reason that Ronnie and Junior and I have been really successful in the teaching, is that we teach a mental aspect to it. We want you to visualize what you're doing and so on and so forth. In fact, if you were going to send me a video that you wanted me to critique your swing and everything, your putting stroke, I would want to watch your routine. I'd want to see how you walked into it. Can you see the line, all these different things. I don't even care about seeing your stroke, and that's completely different. And you can't do that in the long game, obviously. But in the short game, it's more mental than it is physical.
So I certainly want to expand on that here in just a minute. But you talk about, routines. I read in the same article that your father gave you one rule that you're never supposed to violate regarding practice. Do you mind sharing what that was?
Well, there's a few of them. I mean, basically, when I practice, I only practice with 2 balls or 1. Because I broke my back when I was younger, I couldn't practice long periods of time. There's about 6 or 7 different things, one of which is I believe in being a right-handed player. My left hand is my direction hand. And so consequently, I don't do anything with my left hand except that's my direction hand in putting. And most people, if you're right-handed, make the right hand the all-important hand. It controls the power and the speed and also the direction, with really not a very good, your left having not any use in the stroke whatsoever. But my dad basically, if I had one thing he taught me, was a spot putt that I use, which is one of the things McElroy uses, and that's so much as when I come back from the hole, I'm coming back to the ball just before I start my stroke. I'm picking a spot 1 inch in front of the ball, approximately. It's not for alignment. It's not on the line I'm going to roll it. But what I'm doing is not coming back to the ball, because if I come back to the ball, as soon as I touch the ball on my forward stroke of my putter, I'm probably going to move. And it was just a way for me to make the whole world 1 inch putts, and I am awfully good from 1 inch. I don't miss too many from 1 inch.
Right, and you mentioned Rory a couple of times, and I know there were some references, to things that he learned from you going into some of the major events in this season that actually, made him, helped him calm his mind, because we have so many swing thoughts kind of going through our mind all the time, but he picked 2 key words that helped him, settle himself and perform really well. Can you share what those were?
Yeah, it was interesting, and I had no idea what he was gonna say. We were in Vancouver on a family vacation while he was playing the British, and he came out. The one word he was using was process, and the other was spot. And
right.
The spot referred to what he's using in the putting, and the process was what he was doing on the long game. Again, not thinking too much. I mean, the average, well, I tell you one thing my dad did that brings me back to my childhood. He never let me read golf magazines, and he wanted to keep it simple. He'd tell me something, and it took me maybe 30 minutes to change my grip or whatever he told me. And then, for the next 2 weeks, he wouldn't tell me a thing. And I was frustrated because almost like I had a mean father. But psychologists say it takes 3 weeks to make a habit. And that's the problem with most people when they're working is that they tend to, tips tend to last about 3 days. And you give yourself 2 or 3 weeks, you can't remember your fourth tip ago. It just doesn't work. I mean, you're trying
right.
so hard. I mean, when in the putting, what we do, we call it a signature approach. And we basically have you sign your signature on a piece of paper, and right below it, look at it, because that's your correct signature. You just did it, and then try to duplicate it slowly, and you won't be able to do the first letter. And the reason you can't is that when you sign your signature, it's in your subconscious, and that's what you have to do. You got to just see it and let it go. That's how you instinctively shoot a gun or something. You get going. If you're shooting a shotgun, you keep swinging, or for a rifle, the breathing, and you're real steady with it. But it's not like you're thinking about a whole lot of things, because if you do, you're not going to be steady.
Yeah, I'm writing that down. That's great advice. That's fantastic. One of the other things that I read that he, about practice, your father instilled in you was never hit more than 5 balls in a row with the same club. Why was that?
Well, you've really got into this. You've really got some great questions. He wanted me to picture things. I mean, if I started with 5 wedges, I didn't know if I was going to get a 4-wood next or a 7-iron. But if he saw 3, let's say I hit high draws with a 7-iron, he'd say, okay, let's see a low straight one, or let's see a high fade, or let's see something different. So I hit 5 shots, and a lot of times warming up in professional tournaments, the people behind the ropes had to think, geez, Stockton's sure not hitting it very good because he's hitting it every direction. And literally I was, because I'm planning and picturing these shots that I'm going to be hitting. And when you're playing a tournament like the Masters at Augusta, and you're going to be hitting a 8 or 9 iron on, in my case, a 7 iron on 12, the par 3, and you play, your caddy tells you where the pin is on that day. And like 4 or, well, for instance, 16, the other par 3, I've hit as much as little as a 9-iron there and as much as a 4-iron there, because they move the tee 50 yards back and forth, and they move the tee.
Right.
A lot of times they move the tee way up and move the pin way up, and the next day it's a total shock because they move the pin back and the tee back, and you're about a 50-yard difference. And so consequently, your caddy tells you that as you're warming up, and you hit a couple of shots during your practice round, roughly knowing what shots you're going to have when you get in competition. And, it's just like when you go out to play your own course, as you're going along, be aware of where the pin was. If you're going past the 7th hole, be aware of where the pin is, as you're playing number 4. Because when you turn around, a lot of times you can't gauge it right. Of course, we got all the gadgets now that tell us exactly to a foot, but it's still, it gives you an opportunity to plan your round ahead of time, and that's basically what we do. You're not trying to physically do something necessarily, but mentally, you can always be successful if you picture, what you want to have happen before you go about doing it, rather than the guy that says, oh, geez, I hope I get lucky and I hope this goes good. Well, it's not going to. But if you say to yourself, and that's one for your listeners out there, one of the things it cracks me up is you ask them where they're aiming. They're aiming right at the flag. I say, well, that's great. I said, how many straight shots are you going to hit in a day? And he or she are going to go, well, not very many. Well, that's good. So as soon as you swing at this thing, it's going to go offline left or right. It's much easier to play a fade, even if it's only 2 or 3 feet, but play it to do something, not just try and hit a straight shot. I mean, right. I know some pros that do that, but But I'm not about ready to teach somebody to try to do that.
Yeah, no, I mean, as a weekend hacker, I'm with you. For me, I'm aiming at the middle of the green, because it's going to go one way or the other. So I'm always aiming for the middle of the green. That way, at least I've got a putt at it.
Yeah, well, people don't realize. I mean, there's two different shots. You hit a perfect drive, farther than you've ever hit, 295 or something, right down the middle, pins in the middle, and without knowing it, the next shot's the one you're going to miss. Okay, but if you hit a lousy tee shot and you only hit it 240, and you're in the left trees, the trees ahead of you tell you what kind of shots you have to hit. Low, high, left, right, whatever. But it forces you to do something. Those become the good shots. But the one in the middle of the fairway, and you get lackadaisical, and you're so proud of yourself, pumping yourself up, you hit this great tee shot, and you don't think for a couple of minutes of the height you want to hit this next shot or the direction that it's going to go, that's the ones you mess up.
Go back a little bit in time. You became close to another great Trojan golfer, PGA Tour legend Al Geiberger. He became near and dear to my heart when my son and I were over at Augusta a couple of years ago. Mr. Geiberger was kind enough to stop during the par 3 contest, walked over to my son and handed him an autographed golf ball, which was incredibly nice. But talk about your relationship with Mr. Geiberger.
Well, Alan was my closest friend on tour. He was my idol, really. He graduated USC in '59. And that was the year I graduated high school, and I followed him into USC. We were in the same fraternity, Kappa Alpha, and I wasn't nearly as good as he was by any stretch of the imagination. Alan could flat play. He had physical problems throughout his career that precluded some of the stuff, but he was so well liked. I mean, he had one stretch that he didn't win for 7 or 8 years, and then he won Las Vegas and the Sahara tournament, and it was interesting because we'd be playing and people come up, Alan, come on, have a great year. I know you haven't won in a couple of years, and it had been 5 or 6 years, but because of the class he showed and the way he acted, you couldn't tell. He has one of his greatest memories was the fact that when he shot the 59 at Danny Thomas in Memphis, he and I were paired together. In fact, my signature's on his card, which he thinks is just hilarious. I don't know what part of the day he liked the best was the fact that Jerry McGee was the other player, and we're playing the backside first, and Memphis was in terrible shape. We're playing lift, clean, in place because, I mean, it was not in good shape. The greens were terrible, and Bermuda greens. And the first hole, I should have known something was up because Alan made it from about 45 foot for a birdie. I had like a 15, 18-footer for birdie, and I 3-putted. And through the first 9 holes, McGee and I were on the 10th green, and McGee's hit it in 2, and Alan's in the fairway is about, 30, 40 yards short of the green, and I'm up there. I got on in 3, and I'm like 3 over at the time or something, and McGee says to me, he says, this is wild. He says, Alan's 6 under, and we've played 10 holes now, and he's been closest to the pin 3 times in 10 holes. And yet he's just killing us, right? Because he's making every single putt. He promptly chips it in. So now he goes from 6 under to 8 under, and the game's on, right? And I mean, it was unbelievable. And of course, he just laughs. And I called my wife Kathy, and she said, "How'd you play?" I said, "Not good." She said, "What'd you shoot?" I said, 77. She said, "Well, what did Alan shoot?" And I said, 59. And Kathy goes, 59 what? I said, "You heard me." And Alan's standing right there. He thought it was priceless. So, and I came out of the interview area, and this little old lady was there, and she looked at me. It looked like the lady from the Wendy's commercials. And she looks at me and she says, "Son, this must be one of the greatest thrills of your life." And I've just been beat by 18 shots. And it was all I could do to tell her, "Not exactly, ma'am, not exactly," you know, and I walked off. So it was Alan's high point. It wasn't one of my high points other than the fact that I was so proud of him. I mean, the last putt he made on the last hole was, you'd like to have a 3-footer for birdie, but he had like a 12-footer, and it broke, I'm going to say, 6 inches left to right, and left to right's a hard putt for him. And it went nowhere but the dead center of the hole. I mean, it was classic. So he has been he's been a great friend, and like I said, if he was with Spalding, fine, I was with Spalding. If he was with Munsingware, I was with Munsingware. I just followed him. Whatever he said, whatever he did, if it was good enough for Alan, it was good enough for me. And he and I played Colonial. He told me how to play Colonial. He'd never played it any good at all, and I think it shocked him when I won it. And of course, later on, he won the Tournament Players Championship. The Players are near a major tournament there at Colonial, and I finished second, and he won it. So we won the CBS Golf Classics a couple of times together, which you alluded to earlier. So he's been an influence on my life, and it gave me a real positive role model to be around and everything. These are the world's nicest guy.
No, I couldn't agree more with that statement. So let's talk a little bit about some happier times for you. Now, you turned pro in '67. 3 years later, you win your first major, the 1970 PGA Championship at Southern Hills in Tulsa, Oklahoma. You were the only player to finish under par. You were 1 under, winning the tournament by 2 strokes over Bob Murphy and Arnold Palmer, who was paired with you in the final round. And you had kind of a wild final round that day. What sticks out in your memory about that?
Well, it went back to, what stuck in my mind. I just finished reading a book on psychocybernetics by Maxwell Maltz, and hard book to read. My dad wanted me to read it, but I took out of it the fact that you have to be aggressive in anything you do, and the other thing is you have to picture ahead of time what you want to have happen. So I got there on Monday, played a practice round, and I was picturing coming into 18 with some amphitheater, 40,000 people watching me and rooting for me, and lo and behold, on Sunday they were. I mean, it kind of showed the power of positive thinking there. But that week was interesting. Palmer, I learned something 3 years earlier from Don January, 4 years actually, about how to play with Mr. Palmer. And he is a very fast player, and it was one of the only people I ever played slow with. And that morning, on Sunday morning, I've got a 3-shot lead on Arnold, playing with him like you mentioned. Kathy is going to have Ronnie 30 days exactly later, so she's stuck in the clubhouse listening to everybody that are rightly looking for Arnold to win, because if Arnold wins, this is going to be Arnold's first major that he gets. And so consequently, I didn't get much sleep that night, and went out there, and a guy on the 5th hole, I 3-putted, missed about a 3-foot putt, and this guy said to me, he said, you got him now, Arnold. And I looked at this guy, and I was so hot, and I went birdie 2 the next hole, eagle 2 the following hole, double bogey 5 the next one, and then birdied 9. And I went from a 3-shot lead to a 7-shot lead. And from that point in time, all I wanted to do was see how fast I could get in,
Right.
And it was a springboard for me, is the fact that, and that's why I've always rooted for the underdogs. Everybody, you'd like to see Lee win another tournament, or Rory win a tournament, or Mickelson win a tournament, or Tiger. And that's to their, benefit that people root for them and how they handle the gallery. But I know how much that first major meant to me, as well as the second one at Congressional, and it changed my life. And so it was an interesting week. And when I won the second time, I knew that I was going to be a Ryder Cup captain, because there were certain friends of mine, Bobby Nichols, Guy Berger, who won the PGA, but weren't asked to be Ryder Cup captains. And so, the first one, Southern Hills, is important, but the second one in Congressional in Washington, D.C., was more important to me, because it meant the first wasn't a fluke, and it also meant I was going to be a Ryder Cup captain.
You alluded to this a moment ago, Mr. Stockton, but the PGA was the only major that Mr. Palmer never won. Were you conscious of that during the final round, being paired with him, that was the kind of the one he needed to add to get to the career Grand Slam?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, but it was the one I needed to win one. So, a lot of people go through life. Like the people going against Tiger all those years. Tiger ate up a whole lot of other people's majors, got 14 of them, so that took a lot away from a lot of other people. I feel really good that under Nicklaus's watch, I got 2 majors. And it made me feel proud that I accomplished what I did. But I knew that would make Arnold the Grand Slam, But because Arnold to our game, he's the one that made our game. I mean, he and Jack and Gary could have started the big 3, along with Casper, could have been the big 4, and it could have been golf for those 4 guys and not anybody else.
Right.
But supported the tour, and they supported everybody else, and it made, and Arnold, what an ambassador. I mean, that's He is so special because, you know, he looks right at you. Most everybody he looks at, they know they're just he's looking just at them. It's an incredible deal.
You talked about your second PGA championship in '76 at Congressional. Now this time you beat Raymond Floyd and Don January by a stroke. Now Rain had pushed that final round to Monday, and you made a 15-foot putt for par on the 18th hole to actually win that championship and avoid the playoff. So you certainly the greatest putter of all time. And talk about being able to control your emotions and your nerves when you've got a final putt like that.
Well, I mean, everything's relative. First of all, the rain out was highly important because I played 5 holes on Sunday, and they rained out the whole round, but I was 3 over the first 5 holes. Then they rained, which is unusual to rain out in an actual round, but they did. So the next day I go out and start over again. I'm 2 under the same 5 shots difference. So that's basically the reason I won.
Yeah.
But I came down the last hole, and I was playing my usual steady golf. The last fairway I'd hit was number 11, and I was nursing this one-shot lead the entire time coming out of everywhere, and, you know, not straight or anything. And, you know, I got it up and down out of a bunker on 17, and on 18 I just took 3-wood off the tee. Well, I hit 3-wood right down the middle. I was so proud of myself. When I get down there, I had 220 to go, and I'm going, well, that ain't going to happen because with the water right there. So I hit a 4-iron, and I got it down 60 yards short, 55, 60 yards short, and wedged it on the 15-foot, and it stopped quicker than I thought. I actually hit it just the way I wanted to. It just stopped a bit. But the putt was like inside right. Greens were perfect. I actually didn't see the ball go in the hole because I knew 3 foot in the hole or 4 foot in the hole that it was going in. I mean, I had it dead center. My son Ronnie, who's done a lot of this stuff, but we've collaborated on some of the writing and stuff. I got the putt. When I marked the ball into the time I stroked, it was less than 15 seconds.
Wow.
And it was an extremely important putt, but it was just like, okay, mark it. I'd already looked at it from the side. I knew what it did. So I just had to get behind it, see it, and walk into it and let it go. And that's the whole thing. I mean, that's what I allude to when we work with people. Our biggest deal is changing your routine so your routine becomes successful. And whether you're driving the ball or putting or chipping, you know, your routine is going to be what's going to free you up. I mean, people aren't going to go out and shoot pool and not move the cue stick back and forth, or you're not going to just hold up a dart and without moving it back and forth, kind of like somebody fly fishing or something, getting the feel back and forth. That's all you need, and let it go. But people get just absolutely paranoid, and they're trying so hard. In fact, I'm glad I mentioned that because 2 words we avoid is, number 1, trying, which when you try to sign your signature slowly, you can't do it. And the other is we don't want to hit a ball. You can hit a driver, but we want to roll a putt. So we want to feel and roll a putt. We don't want to try and hit it. It's dramatically different.
Right. So now, here's the amazing story to me, Mr. Stockton. So that final round gets pushed to Monday. You had been previously booked for a corporate event that Monday night with American Airlines and made a commitment to be there, and you weren't going to let those folks down. Do you mind sharing the sequence of events from the time that putt drops to what happens later that night?
Oh, yeah, it was interesting. Because I usually book, and that's at that point in time I was doing close to 80 corporate outings a year. So after a tournament to finish on Sunday, I'd do a corporate outing on Monday. This happened to be American Airlines, and I finished, did the interviews and around the green, and then we went inside for the press, and then we went down to the locker room, and that's where President Ford called, which has been an interesting week because Kathy and Ronnie and David and Junior and I had gone to the White House on Monday and gone through every room in the White House. It was fantastic.
Wow.
And so he called. In fact, Kathy became the first woman into the Congressional men's locker room because President Ford wanted to say hello to her and congratulate her. And he was a good friend. So, I mean, that meant a lot. Well, we got through, and it was like 7:15, and so I called my contact at American and said, I'm through now. Is there anybody still there? He said, absolutely. I said, well, I'm heading over. So I brought my big cardboard check for, a fantastic amount. I think it was $45,000 or something. Kids nowadays play for a little more than we did, but I thought it was an impressive check. So I had the check with me, and I mean, we sat there till probably 11 o'clock at night just asking questions, just having a great time. And turned out it was a good day both ways because they gave me my full fee for just being there for a couple of hours. So it was it was a full day, but that's kind of what I did. You alluded to the fact that I'm not in the Hall of Fame, and the reason I'm not, although a couple of guys now have won less on the tour than I did, but, you know, 2 majors, I've been an interesting case because there's like 10 categories, and I'm in every one of them. Number of wins, you know, majors, all this different stuff. Well, you know, I've only won, they counted back from 11, they discounted a team championship, and they got me down to 10. Well, most of the guys win 16, 17, 18. Now, David Graham's got in because he got worldwide wins, but he'd only won 8 times. So, and Chi-Chi less. You know, they got different cases. In my case, what's hurt me is the fact that I really gave a lot to playing the Pro-Ams and doing this corporate stuff. So Monday and Tuesday, I'm always out doing something else. And, you know, that doesn't bother me because I know there's an awful lot of people that I've affected, and now, you know, I've had 3 careers, one on the regular tour and thought I'd retire, and then all of a sudden here comes the seniors, and that was just a gold mine. That was a hoot. And then get hurt, and then all of a sudden, you know, start teaching seriously. I'd always taught, but, you know, 4 years ago in 2009, 5 years ago now, started working basically the teaching when I had rotator cuff surgery, and I know my dad's looking down thinking I really finally got it right because, you know, when you win and you're a champion, you have to be selfish. You really do. And I feel like I'm really giving back. I mean, for me to walk into the, you know, locker room now or like go to the PGA this year, you know, I sat at Rory's table not knowing he's going to win the tournament 4 days later at the past champions dinner, and he's just come back with the British Open trophy. In fact, Junior and I had our picture taken with Rory in the locker room there at La Hall this year. And it feels great to be relevant in my age and basically, you know, pass on this knowledge that my dad taught me. And it's been a real treat. It really has. And the people, President Ford, so on and so forth, it's a life much better than I would have ever envisioned.
Oh, you're an absolute treasure to the game of golf. There's no question about that. Mr. Stockton, you talked about the Ryder Cup, and you on 2 winning teams, and you captained another. When you look at how the U.S. has fared, you know, over the last 10, 15 Ryder Cup matches, what, you know, if anything, in your mind, needs to change to help the U.S. become more successful?
Well, I think it's pretty simple. And, I mean, I was in another one, too, because I was an assistant captain along with Olin Brown and Raymond Floyd for Paul Azinger in 2008 at Valhalla. And it's been interesting. I've been in 4 Ryder Cups, and we've won all 4, not because I've been in them, but, you know, at least I've been a part of winning and not losing. And what needs to happen, and Mickelson, you know, may have said the stuff at the wrong time, but he said the correct stuff, is that I still think Azinger in 2008 was the best job any Ryder Cup captain has ever done. His thought of the pod system, using what the Navy SEALs do, and breaking a 12 or 13-man squad into 3 or 4-man groups, which is what Azinger broke his 12-man squad into three squads of 4. That's why he had 3 assistant captains. And so I had my 4 that I was controlling, and you know, it let him be above the fray, and we would give him our input, and it worked out a whole lot better. And so what needs to happen, and Mickelson alluded to it, is that what happened in 2008 was an eye-opening experience. I mean, Faldo never saw it coming. Azinger did just a fantastic job. And what's happened, the difference is the Ryder Cup, the captains and the policies are determined by the PGA of America. It's their show. And Kiowa, mine in 91, was the first one that ever made money for them because they'd finally gone slightly commercial, and now they've gone much more so. But what they do is every 2 years you have a different captain, and that captain basically likes to tweak the different things. And what Mickelson was trying to say is this pod system and how you pick the people and how you put them together. And it's like any group of people. You want to put them together mentally so they feel comfortable. It's not necessarily how they play physically in our game or our sport. And so the task force now, what's happened is that you've got 3 or 4, and I know Azinger just got through talking to the PGA within the last week, I don't know exactly. I know it went well, but I don't know exactly what's happened. They've got the next 3 or 4 captains, possibility-wise, in Mickelson, Woods, Stricker, and Furyk, to be on this advisory council, along with 3 PGA. So because before we had no idea how they picked them. For instance, I was the captain in '91 at Kiowa. The next time I was asked anything about a Ryder Cup, about like who should we pick as captain and this and that and the other thing, was 2004, 13 years later. Azinger was a captain in 2008, and he wasn't asked anything for the next, 6 years. I mean, that just doesn't make sense. I mean, I debriefed for a day and a half and then never was talked to. So it didn't make sense. And I know some favoritisms. I have my life. I can't figure out why Larry Nelson was never a Ryder Cup captain. You know, came out of Vietnam and had not played golf till he was 24, and all he does is win 3 majors, 2 PGA championships, but for some reason or other he gets bypassed. I don't think that's going to happen because the European Tour, for instance, they run it. So, like McGinley, their captain this year was putting Dubuisson, the Frenchman, with McDowell in practice rounds and pairing him in the tournament. So they got paired together and they became friendly, and that's the best thing to do. But our tour runs our tournament, and the PGA doesn't do anything. So you kind of try to get these guys bonded in a week and a half. It's not going to work very good. And the system showed its flaws this year when Herschel didn't get in after winning the FedEx, and Chris Kirk didn't get in and should have got in. And those are the things this committee is going to have to fix. And having those players, the ex-captains and the future captains, I think it's going to work really good. And I think we're going to, when we convene again in 2 years in Minneapolis at Hazeltine, I think you're going to see a completely different result.
I saw a picture of you holding the Ryder Cup trophy after your victorious event in '91. I see a picture of you ankle deep in the ocean, looking like you just came off the golf course with your blue blazer on. Did you jump in holding the trophy?
No, I got thrown in. By Pavin and a couple of the others. Totally shocked me. They just all of a sudden grabbed me and started running. And of all the things, a lot of times the Ryder Cup stuff didn't fit too well. And that blue one fit really good. But I tell you what, it wouldn't have fit Billy Barty by the time I got out of that ocean an hour later. That stuff was shrunk up. So it was a cool picture. It was a really cool picture, and it was a great time. It's the biggest honor of my life for Kathy and I to be picked to, they run up the American flag, and I know this program goes to the servicemen out there, and we really respect and admire all you do for us. I mean, they play the national anthem, and they run that flag up. That golf ball looks like a marble, I guarantee you, because it's hard enough to hit it anyway, but you start playing for your country, it's a whole different thing.
Yeah, I bet it is. It's a couple more before we let you go, Mr. Stockton. I know you talked about Phil Mickelson, and you've worked with Phil on his putting, which he seems to struggle with from time to time. Particularly the shorter putts, which I think makes a lot of us golfers nervous. What have you told to Phil to help him through the same process? Is it the same things you've shared with Roy, or is it something different?
Everybody's different. We don't have a particular method. You take a look at people. Rory tends to be too fast, and you slow him down slightly. He doesn't take any practice swings, and like that. Mickelson tends to be slower and tries harder, so consequently, some of the short ones he moves. It's just the way things are. Two different people. McIlroy just lets it go. He is great on the spot, which you said is one of the 2 words he uses. He comes back, there's the spot, rolls it over it. Mickelson has a harder time seeing the spot. He works with Pels also, and it's kind of intriguing the fact that part of my routine, Pels has a lot of different routines in mind, and he has, he'll have Phil hit, 30, 40 balls from 3 or 4 foot around the hole in a circle, just continually going around, which to me that's backwards counterproductive to what I do. But that's just, Phil's trying to take the best of 2 really good instructors, and that's what he does. And he's at the point where he knows what I would tell him, It's just a matter of what he feels comfortable doing.
For our listeners here on the Armed Forces Radio Network, Mr. Stockton, you do a lot of work with charities. In particular, some of the things I saw on your site are the Medal of Honor Golf Classic and the Stater Brothers Charities, the Dave Stockton Heroes Challenge. Talk about those events and the wonderful work you're doing to give back.
Well, it's not something publicized. I mean, I was 4F because of my back, and so I never served in the service. My father ran a bomb plant. In fact, had the unique thing that he ran the bomb plant, and he lost his watch one day, and he actually got it back in 1946. It was discovered in a bomb that had been dropped on Tokyo and hadn't gone off. And my dad got his watch back, and it was kind of interesting. But in 2002, I was invited to go to they were having the Medal of Honor Convention in Riverside, California, and I was invited to go. A good friend, Jack Brown, Stater Brothers Markets, invited me to go, and Kathy and I ended up sitting there and got to meet. There were over 200 living right now. There's like in the high 70s that are living, even though they've had a few new ones added. But I got to meet them, and I asked Ron Ray, who is their president, who lives in Florida. I asked him if they do anything with the golf, and he said no. I said I'd love to do a clinic for your group at your next convention. Well, the next convention was in Congress outside of Washington D.C. and Lansdowne, and they had 12 guys come out, 13 guys come out. We had a great clinic and we played and everything, and I just hooked them because in the end, 5 years later, we're doing it at Boston, at TPC Boston, and we have 37 guys playing. And we got clubs for them. They got bags. They got their service, their whatever service they were in, Marines, Army, Navy, whatever. They got the different bags with their name on them. It says when they received, the date they received the Medal of Honor. It's just been a cool part. So I've become very good friends with them. We've done it for a long time. And I feel like I've given a lot back. Certainly a lot of them are a lot better golfers than they would have otherwise been. But again, that speaks to what our sport is like. The Larry Nelson that comes out of Vietnam that had never played, and all the guys listening and gals listening, if you haven't played, that doesn't mean you can't be a really, really good golfer, because you're highly trained if you're in the service. And I'm here to tell you, they say golf's 90% mental, and just it's true. I mean, it's just, that's all it is. It boils down to the fact that if you mentally prepare yourself, you're gonna be able to play this game. It's fun to see the guys that have disabilities. Just because they have disabilities doesn't stop them. And it's been a real pleasure to be able to spend the time with them.
Speaking of a real pleasure to spend time with, you have been an absolute gem. I can't thank you enough for being a part of the show this morning, Mr. Stockton. Tell our listeners how they can follow you, both online, your website, and over social media.
Well, anybody, you get a hold of me at dave@stocktongolf.com. And I'm out there, looking forward. I don't do much on the Champions Tour anymore, but certainly are on the LPGA and the PGA Tour. They can get on. I don't do Facebook. I'm the old school, right? My kids do and everything. But
right.
We'll look forward if they're around any tournament. I hope everybody comes up and says hello. And I want to thank you because I've never heard anybody have. I don't know who does your research, but it's a good thing I didn't do anything bad, or you would have brought that up too. So I appreciate.
I do my own research, and I feel like that's the right thing to do out of respect for your time.
Well, you did a heck of a job, Chris. I enjoyed talking to you. Anytime, I'll be glad to do it again. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Stockton. Thanks for taking time away from your hunt and your grandson to join me. It was a huge thrill to be with you. I hope you'll come back and do it again sometime. I'd really love to.
That'd be fine, Chris. Thank you.
All right. Take
Bye.
care, Mr. Stockton. All the best to you and your family.
Okay, bye.
Good night. Wow. You want to talk about a huge thrill and a huge privilege. Mr. Dave Stockton, boy, just one of the absolute greatest, players of all time. I can't imagine how the PGA of America has not put him in the Hall of Fame. He has done so much. He's achieved so much. Out on both tours, on the regular tour, a couple of majors. Whether it's 11 or 10 victories they give him credit for, or not, 14 more on the senior tour, and everything he has done to help be an ambassador for the game of golf and winning the Ryder Cup and being a part of 2 winning teams and another as an assistant captain, as he talked about. How great a resume do you have to get into the PGA Hall of Fame? I don't know, but his certainly belongs there, and I hope we hear very soon about his election and induction. I will certainly be looking forward to that. All right, before we close up shop, I want to let you know about a great new book. You've heard me talk about it over the last several weeks. It's called A Golden 18. Written by Roger Schiffman, and the photography is by one of our friends and one of the greatest photographers anywhere on the planet, Jim Mandeville. Jim, I'm sure you know, is the director of photography at the Nicklaus Companies. The book showcases some of Mr. Nicklaus's greatest course designs. The stories about the courses are great, and the photography is simply outstanding. In fact, it's so good, you're going to want a second copy of the book so you can take some of the pictures out of the first one and get them framed. To get your copy, go to nicklaus.com and hover over the products and partners, and then click over books and videos. So again, hover over products and partners, and then click on books and videos. If you love golf and studying photography, you're going to love this book. All right, everybody, it's time for me to put a bow on this one. My sincere thanks once again to Mr. Dave Stockton for being such a great guest and generous with his time this morning. And we thank you for tuning in. We appreciate you the most. Please also check out our sister show, Thursday Night Tailgate, with me and my co-host Bob Lazare and our announcer Joe Lajanusa. That show airs every Thursday night from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time. You can find it live on Blog Talk Radio. You can also hear us here on the Armed Forces Radio Network, and also from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time every Friday night on Boost Radio. So please join us. We've got great legends from around the NFL and CFL joining us every single week. Please check out both shows, Next on the Tee here and Thursday Night Tailgate on Facebook. Give us a like. That's important to us too. You can find us also online, nextonthetee.net and ThursdayNightTailgate.com. From there, you can stream for free or download any of our archived episodes by going on there. We've got them all listed up there for you. So please, you can stay up to date with also who some of our future guests are going to be. Thanks once again for choosing to listen to the show today. I really appreciate you the very most. Until next week, hit 'em straight, my friends.